Welcome to the webinar, Healing Trauma in the Energy Field. So many of us carry invisible scars, not only from what happened, but from what we never had a chance to move through. We might have healed mentally, even physically, and yet something still feels held, dimmed, or unfinished. What if that something isn't only in your mind or your body, but in the energy field that surrounds and animates you? And what if that field itself can be healed? Tonight, we'll explore how trauma imprints not only the nervous system, but also the quantum architecture of our being, and how working through the energy field can unlock healing that feels complete, coherent, and free. My name is Cecile George, and I'll be guiding you through the intersection of science, embodiment, and energy that this healing work represents. So some words about me. I began my professional life as an engineer and later an MBA and consultant with McKinsey. So I was trained to decode complex systems to look for structure, pattern, and also efficiency. But over the years, I realized the most intricate system of all is not a business or a machine. It's the human energy field, the luminous architecture that holds our memories, emotions, and potential. For the past 8 years, I have worked as a trauma specialist and healer within the modern mystic school tradition. And I've witnessed profound shifts in people who carry deep trauma simply by engaging the field directly through tools such as life activation and initiation, with no other forms of therapy. But that's not to mean that this has to be excluded. Of course, we can always do a variety of things. My intention isn't to replace science with spirituality, but to weave them so that healing becomes what it was always meant to be, a return to coherence. Now, where does trauma live? Trauma lives in the body, yes, but also in the field. So it doesn't end where the body ends. It extends into the subtle field that surrounds and informs the body, what in the ancient wisdom traditions we call the aura, and in modern physics we call that the quantum field. The question is not just what happened to you, but where did it land? Where did it kind of get stored? Where did the information stay imprinted in your system? Is it in your nervous system, your breath, your energy field, the way you move, the fascia? And so true healing addresses all these layers together. So the somatic foundations, and this is where I started my training as a therapist and healer. In somatic traditions, we say that trauma is not what happened to us, but it's what happened inside of us when we cannot process what happens. So basically, something happened too quickly or too fast, or it was outside our frame of reference. Body-based trauma work shows us that trauma is bound energy. The nervous system freezing a moment in time, trapping a charge in the body, a tension in the body, in some physical locations. When we track sensation, so when we start feeling, the sensations in our body, like tremor or breath, we can allow this charge that is in our body to complete and to be released. Yet sometimes, even after deep healing, something remains. There's a subtle residue, like a static in the air. And that residue often lives not only in the muscles or fascia, but in the bioenergetic field, the electromagnetic and quantum information field surrounding and permeating the body. If the nervous system is the hardware, you could think of the field as the operating system. Some people access healing more readily through the field first. There's no hierarchy, only resonance. And so there's obviously almost like different entry points, if you want. So that's a slide that kind of illustrates that a little bit. So from a Kabbalistic perspective, trauma can also be understood as a thwarted expression. The Kabbalah is a very ancient science, that's been used in the mystery school traditions for a very long time. And here we look at, trauma as an interruption of the divine flow through one or more of the sephirots or the energetic spheres of the tree of life. Each sephira represents a principle of creation within us: wisdom, understanding, compassion, power, beauty, foundation, presence. And when pain or fear blocks expression in one of these centers, the energy constricts and the system compensates, and it starts overexpressing in one area and then shutting down another. So, for example, we might become uncomfortable with setting a boundary and then overly forgiving because we were in a situation where setting a boundary was not possible. And then we kind of forget that this becomes a possibility in our life later on. So these are kind of examples of how we can, start over relying in one way of doing things. So in this sense, trauma is not a moral failure. It's a disruption, if you could say, in the natural circuit of divine expression, a distortion in the light's passage throughout the soul's architecture. So from a Kabbalistic perspective, we speak about the evolution of the soul, and as we heal, our soul mends and our whole being starts to become more whole. So healing restores that current of creation, allowing life to move through us freely again. Um, so the quantum field in physics, the quantum field, it's a field is a continuous fabric of energy that fills all of space. So particles are simply ripples in that fabric. So in human terms, we're not solid objects moving through emptiness. We are fields within fields exchanging information at the speed of light. So in metaphysical terms, what that means is that we're basically constantly exchanging information with our environment through what we call in the mystery school traditions, the aura and the soul. And so these energy bodies are receiving or recipients of information, and they also keep imprints of our past experiences. And so when trauma occurs, the field's coherence fractures, its wave patterns distort, so the natural rhythm of movement in these energy fields kind of changes. It's like an interference in a radio signal, and the body starts to mirror that distortion as a tension or disconnection, because we say that as within, so without, and as without, so within. So there's a connection between the energy field around us, the quantum field, and our physical state. And so healing is the restoration of coherence. When light and awareness, vibration, intention re-enter the field, it's an opportunity for the patterns to realign, and then the nervous system follows. So that's quantum medicine, the medicine of consciousness interacting with the field that creates the body. So we can say that healing equals coherence or balance. Um, So when trauma distorts, coherence restores. Light realigns the field and the body follows. That these are the core principles really of the quantum healings that we have had so much experience with through the mystery school traditions. They've been around for a very long time. So they help us to move from chaos to order and from fragmentation to flow, meaning that they help to restore the vessel or the container of our being. So healing is, in a way, you could say, the art of remembering our natural state. A natural state is actually to be in coherence, to be radiant, and to be whole. So we're going to do a brief exercise together. I'll invite you to close your eyes for a moment and to sense your breath, not only in your lungs, but as a rhythm throughout your entire field. So just taking a breath and sensing how your breath is affecting all of your field as you inhale and exhale. Imagine that with every exhale, The tension of past experiences releases, and with every inhale, light enters, intelligence, coherent light. And as you continue to breathe, feel that light tracing the outline of your body, the outline of your aura, of the spaces around you, filling the space around you, weaving together the parts of you that once felt separate. You may notice warmth, tingling, or simply quiet. Your field, your aura, has in its natural state is to remember its original code, the pattern of wholeness or the pattern of light. So that it's its natural state, and it's also its natural desire to flow into that direction, to receive light, to become whole. So by breathing and taking care of your energy bodies through different practices that have existed for a very long time, we can start to learn how to repair this field around us and how to bring it back into balance. So there's a particular modality that is very suited for this work and for this work of repair because it's so comprehensive. And in my years of working with trauma, I found that some people reach a threshold. Somatic and psychological work brings them to stillness, but they sense there's more. And in fact, sometimes people come to this modality of the life activation without having had any prior experience of therapy, and it's equally beneficial for them. So the life activation is a tool that I learned through the Modern Mystery School, and it basically allows us to reconnect to the true nature of the self in an elevated state. Or sometimes we also say to activate the blueprint of the human system itself, the core of who we are. Um, so this is also sometimes called the DNA activation. It's not metaphorical, it's a precise and energetic protocol that awakens dormant aspects of the light body. So after activations, clients have really quite extraordinary experiences. Sometimes long-held grief starts to dissolve, the creative flow is returning, anxiety is replaced by clarity. And what's happening is their field is receiving more light, more information, and begins to reorganize. The frozen trauma patterns find space to move. So the life activation doesn't erase our history, it recodes our relationship to it. It reminds the system that we're not defined by what broke us, but by the template of light that has always been whole, always been there. So this is a very powerful session that only needs to be done once. It's not something that needs to be repeated. And when we do it, it kickstarts a very deep and lasting transformation that is started by this session rather than only happening in the session. It really starts a new way of being, a new way of living. Beyond the life activation, there's other tools that I found very beneficial that support or expand on the freedom and the healing that happens from this session. It's as if the life activation opens the door, a return of light and potential into the system. And yet that light then wants to move, to express, to inhabit every layer of our being. And so the next step is full spirit activation, a process that clears the pathways of the sephiroths of the tree of life. And it awakens the flow of divine intelligence through all our chakras and the sephiroths of the tree of life. which helps with releasing subtle blockages that may still be limiting our awareness of who we truly are. And so once the spirit is fully, you could say, online through those two initial activations, there's the opportunity or the option to, if you are ready, to attend the Empower Thyself initiation, which is a sacred process that strengthens and repairs the aura. And so it reestablishes a deep sense of safety within the self. And it helps us move beyond fear or victimization, anchoring a living experience of personal sovereignty. And for those of you who wish to continue the journey, there's then the option to study the Universal Hermetic Ray Kabbalah, which is a profound path of expansion. And through its study and meditative practice, we learn to navigate the Sephiroths consciously, transforming calcified behaviors into luminous expressions. Each sphere becomes a mirror of wholeness, inviting us to live as a coherent, creative being in dialogue with the divine, with the universe, and to co-create our reality with, all the beings and the aliveness that we experience in our relationship to them. So together, these steps form an elegant architecture of transformation. So we move from activation, integration of that activation, to embodiment through the full spirit activation, and the empower thyself, and then the radiant expression that comes from reestablishing our foundation in the light. So yeah, it's almost like there's a flow that, not almost, there is a flow that gets reestablished from moving from one to the other. Healing trauma in the energy field is not a bypass of the body. It's the completion of what the body began. Energy work restores resonance, and somatic awareness grounds that resonance into lived experience. And together, they allow us to release the story of the wound and re-enter the story of light. If you feel called to experience this directly, I invite you to take the next step and to experience a private life activation with me. It's a one-on-one session in which we open the energetic architecture of your system, bringing a new light into your DNA. And this process is gentle, precise, and profoundly catalytic in the sense that it creates a fertile ground for further healing. And it kind of will enhance any other kind of forms of therapy or healing that you may have been doing or may still be doing. Many people who do this describe it as the moment where the healing finally locked in. So if this is something that calls you, I would be delighted to work with you. Yeah, so healing is remembering the rhythm of coherence. So I thank you. And as we close, I invite you to take a breath again, noticing the subtle hum behind your heart. That hum is the field, always present, always coherent beneath the noise. Healing is about remembering that hum. So I thank you for being here, for bringing your presence and curiosity and courage. And may you walk forward lighter, brighter, and more connected to the intelligence of life itself. I'm Cecile George, and I'll see you soon in the field.